So one of the fun things about the federal market, it is the largest market out there, right? And it's the one that keeps growing. Easy example now is to look back at 2020 and with COVID, every single market, including state and local governments, all got hit. But the federal government just kept spending, right? And so the federal market is this largest market out there. And obviously, large primes are one of the biggest beneficiaries of that spending that happens. In FY 2023, large prime contractors won about $500 billion, right? And that's a huge portion of the spending that's out there. I think the number is actually higher, but I'm being conservative. Also, I'm being really easy on my math for myself. But clearly, about $500 billion went to larges. And theoretically, larges have a responsibility to spend 30% of that with small businesses. The whole idea is that the federal government is doing these set-asides to small business. We want to spend like 23 or 27% or whatever it is with small businesses. And so what they said was when money goes to large contractors and they win these big contracts, I think it's like over 700,000, but that doesn't really matter. When it's billions and billions, right? The government wants the large primes to take on the responsibility of making sure American small businesses are getting a piece of that pie, ability to participate. And so about 30% of the large prime dollars that go out in contracts is expected to go to small businesses through small business plans that are put into those large contracts. And when you think about 30% on 500 billion, that's $150 billion. That basically is what small business set-aside dollars were in 2023, right? And so there's this huge other portion of dollars that are out there that I want you to understand to go after. There's a certain time to go after, right? If you're in here today's training and you're just getting started in government contracting, it's really not for you. You still need to understand this and learn it. The training will be good, but really larges have a higher criteria, and I'll talk more about that on who they work with. But I want to talk to you about that $150 billion, that 30% that typically goes to small businesses on large contracts. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let me just share my screen really quick. So today I want to be talking about how to subcontract with large prime contractors. And I'm going to break the training up because we only got till 12:30 this afternoon. I'm going to break the training up to into three main categories. But first I want to begin with just reminding us all there's three ways to make money in the federal market. So there's three revenue streams. I'll talk about that. Then I'm going to talk about how large primes evaluate you, right? When somebody looks at your company, what do they see? What are they looking for? And that's what we'll cover next. And then I'm going to follow up with steps you can take to look good to the large primes. Large primes have a certain criteria they want, and pretty much you can see it as what's in it for me. That's what they want. And I'm going to cover down on some of the things you should be paying attention to. And the last thing is I just want to give you some tips on how to build relationships with large prime contractors. I'm going to try to take this a little different angle because I have a lot of training. If you're not familiar, I've done over 450 trainings in the last 2 years, and many, like 50 plus, are in building relationships. So I have a lot of training that goes into the depth of how to build strategic relationships, how to reach out to people, how to engage them and maintain a relationship. So today I want to take a little bit of a different spin on how to build some of those relationships with large primes. That's what we're going to cover down on today. If you don't know who I am, welcome. My name is 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret, it's just a process. And when we follow a process, we're going to have repeatable success, repeatable, predictable success. And that's what I want for you. Just hide my little thing there. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our Government Contracting Success newsletter. It's where we put out a lot more information. We do these daily trainings, which is great, but this is the how of federal sales. But I also put out a ton of information about agency understanding and homework that you can do in there. So whether it's about the organization and the people and how to reach them, phone numbers, or strategic plans, et cetera, that's a place that I share a lot of it is in our newsletter. The last thing I wanted to say is thank you to those of you who registered for training today. We had over 200 people register to attend today's training. And that's just a quick thank you that I really appreciate that you do for us. is letting us know you're coming. You don't have to register, and if you skip it, it's not the end of the world. But when you do it, we really appreciate it, because LinkedIn then pushes the word out to other people. Plus, afterwards, I can go in and see who's registering for training, and maybe begin to learn more about your company. We have over 400 people here live, right? And I'm assuming some of you might take a screenshot and send it to me if you're generous. But registering for training enables you to network easier with people as well. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 ways to make money in the federal market. And I just want to touch pretty quickly on this. The 3 ways you can make money off that federal contract dollar are subcontracting under small businesses, prime contracting with federal agencies, and subcontracting under large businesses. Those are the 3 ways. They're the only ways. It doesn't matter whether you sell products, construction, professional services, IT services, it doesn't matter. One way or another, you're doing those 3 things. And really, some people might say subcontracting in general is just the second way, and that's all there is. But the reason I separate it out is because subcontracting under a small business is so much different. It's a completely different process and effort than subcontracting under larges. For example, when you subcontract under a small business, one of my favorite things is that you generally are talking to the business owners in there still. And so they remember what it was like to be you. The subcontracting under a small business is not a revenue stream you do only when you get started out, but it is certainly the fastest and easiest path to revenue. So if you're not making $3+ million, you should absolutely be subcontracting under small businesses, generally 5, 10 million, maybe 20 million if you're starting to do some millions yourself. But these small businesses, it's a really easy path, but it's also a path that large primes go after. So I had a customer that had $100+ million prime contract, and on their team, GDIT and Booz Allen, these billion-dollar firms, were subcontracted under this small business that was doing less than 20 million at the time of the contract award. Now they're doing a lot better. They're graduating small, right? But so everybody should be subcontracting under smalls. The next phase is the next revenue stream, and the way to make money is prime contracting. I think this is the way we all pretty much think you get in, right? We're like, okay, we were a government contractor, we're going into the agencies. The thing about that is, first off, it takes a little longer, in my opinion, than subbing with a small. Second, they look for more stuff from you. So they're looking for past performances, experience. They want to see that you've been paid for the work. Doesn't matter if it's commercial, state, local, subcontracting. But you have one of the big differences between the subcontracting and priming is that you have all the administrative responsibility. Now, for a lot of us, that's great. We want it. But that's the typical way of people looking at government contracting, priming. And the third path is subcontracting under a large business. I already talked about it, $500 billion, 30% of it, 150 million of it, or billion of it should be going to smalls. And so that is absolutely a path you want to go to. The thing to keep in mind about subcontracting with large businesses and why it is hard for small businesses until they hit a certain stage of maturity is that large businesses are very risk averse. They don't want to take, in fact, the agencies take more risk. Large primes are worried about bringing in small businesses that are going to make them look bad, do a poor job, and then they do a poor job for the government, and the government won't blame the subcontractors. The government will blame the large. And the other thing is I put here is that large businesses, they don't care about subcontracting with smalls. This is a myth that has to come out of small businesses' heads to think that an agency that is not hitting its small business goals or a large prime care about those small business goals. They don't. If the agency cared about those goals, they'd hit it. There's no excuse not to. All you have to do is come to me and I will help your agency hit it in a single year. There's no excuse for not hitting the goal. So you want to go to agencies that are hitting the goal if you're trying to go after that. But with larges, my point of saying this is never, ever approach a large about the small business goal. That's not what they value. That's not what the agency values. The agency values mission success. And very similarly, the large prime is mission and contract success, right? They need to deliver. If you can do that, they'll love you. If all you come in and say, hey, I'm a veteran-owned, woman-owned, small business, et cetera, they're not going to really be that attractive. So let's talk about how large prime contractors evaluate subcontractors, in particular small businesses, right? And these aren't in any particular order, but they are in, they do begin with what I teach people. When I go to a large prime, I don't lead with my capabilities. I actually lead with my company's organizational maturity and stability. And that's what I teach my customers. First, I show them how stable we are. Then I say, this is what we do, right? So that's a different training. You can watch that back there. But organizational maturity is the first thing a large prime looks at. They want to know that you're financially capable of paying your employees when it's a 30, 60, 90-day turnaround from the time you submit invoices to the time you get paid again, right? They want to know that if the government, something happens and the contract payments are all paused, can you keep paying your people? Do you have financial vehicles in place, a line of credit, whatever, that enables you to keep paying your people so that they don't bail on you, which means they'll bail on the large, which means they're bailing on the agency contracts and projects. When you have financial stability, it shows them that you've got a level of maturity. Another example of back office maturity is your accounting processes. So if you're a DCAA compliant, or more importantly, an audited company, that's really a huge sign to them. Staffing capabilities. This is another example of organizational maturity. I have heard from large primes, and it just shocks me to the core that this happens, but I understand it once it does. Large primes talk about how they will have a team together with smalls on it, and then the smalls will be looking to the larges to help them staff up to serve their contract. It's like, I don't get it. You want me to just hand you cash? That's not how it works. The larges are looking for us to have our own staffing capability. So we need to have, first off, a level of expertise with staff on hand. Personally, I really like pulling people off existing contracts, migrating them over onto something new with a large, and then backfilling a satisfied customer. There's an easier path there than putting unknown people on a brand new relationship and new contract. But the other thing about staffing is they want to know that you've got that same financial process in staffing, that if you lose somebody, we all lose somebody. How are you replacing them? What's your process for making sure you have people? You don't have to have a deep bench of any sort, but you have to be able to fulfill a position within a few days. How fast can you turn around and fill a hole? Right? How well are you doing retention within your company is a huge sign of organizational maturity. Are people staying with your company, or does your company have a lot of turnover? That kind of thing is really important because it minimizes the risk the more mature your organization is. So seeing the relationship in the way that the large prime sees it is developing that relationship. The second main bullet that I have here is they look for you to have a clear niche. Too many people come in to a large prime and say they can do everything, right? There's a task order or a PWS and it's got 10 or 20 tasks and like, oh, we can cover that on all of them. So what you're saying is you can do everything. The large prime doesn't even do everything. That's why they sometimes look for other companies that they can buy or work with. They want to know that you have a clear specialty, risk management framework. Maybe you do machine learning, artificial intelligence type projects, right? Maybe you do admin support, which is a type of a niche that maybe they don't even want to do that work, or managed services on the IT side where it's a little bit lower level skill set than they want to be billing out at. That's an area you could fill. Or on the construction side, right? We do framing or something. We do plumbing. It's like, okay, you don't do general contracting. That's a great example. It's like a small business barely doing a few million saying we're a general contractor. So you're telling me you're going to be able to build a VA hospital or a VA campus. That's what the larges do. What you want to do is come in with a clear niche. So not only can they quickly understand what you do, but they can see, you can help us right here. This is where we can put you. The third one is agency intimacy, understanding the agency better than it understands itself. One of the things the large looks for is people who know that agency in a way that you can share it with the large. So when they're going after opportunities, their proposals are stronger based on your agency understanding. And so I put here, agency intimacy includes knowledge of the agency, just a working knowledge of them. And I think I'll talk about some of the ways you could do it in a minute, but just understanding that agency, being in there, understanding their policies. The second thing is having experience within that agency. It's totally okay if you were a subcontractor in there. Actually, I used an example a minute ago about one of my customers who won $100+ million contract with larges underneath them as the sub. The reason those larges even joined that team is because this customer, for the 10 years prior, had been doing a lot of, some small priming, but a lot of subcontracting around the same major DoD command. So they brought massive experience and knowledge of how things are done. Many of their people were actually retired and then in there. And so when the largest looked, they said, you know that agency, we want to work with you. In this case, they subcontracted underneath, but it's the same thing when you sub under a large. If you've got that experience, if you've got the relationships with people, you can introduce them to folks that they don't know or they haven't really met before. Maybe you're going out to coffee. I run into a lot of small businesses who sit down and have coffee or even beers or going over to somebody's house. It's like, you cannot have bigger relationships there than those, but it's sufficient if you're just going in there and having conversations about the need that government has, and you bring that to a large prime, they will sit there and evaluate you higher. This small business can contribute to us winning, right? Why should we put you on the team? Because you have solid agency intimacy that will help us win. Past performance goes with that experience, but having actual past performances that could be used as you guys go after opportunities, that's a big deal, right? My last company, I had some of the largest past performances within, we did Microsoft SharePoint. So within that space, we had 100,000 user migrations and application development bases, et cetera. And so we were able to bring those really impressive past performances, which would, for us, it attracted Booz Allen type companies. And then the last thing is, do you have what they need, right? Do you even know what they need? You want to build those relationships and begin to understand it, but do you have what they need? What are they trying to do? Where are they trying to go? When you understand a large, you will begin to understand what they need, and that's what you need to bring in. Hey, really quickly, I want to pause for 1 second and just thank our sponsors. Most of you probably don't know this, but I don't get funding from anybody. I've done 450 of these live, and that's fun for us. We love doing it. But the reason we're able to do this is because of our customers. And so I just wanted to showcase one of our customers here, Graham. They do professional support services and American Sign Language, deaf communication access. Check them out. Connect with them. In fact, right now, if you're feeling generous, just put Graham Rocks into the chat and say thanks to them. It's enough if you put Graham Rocks. That's the same as saying thank you. But they're an 8A certified woman-owned small business with a ton of past performance throughout the government. If you're looking to connect, go ahead and take a screenshot, come back to the video. But I just want to say thank you to Graham for sponsoring all this great training by being one of our customers. Okay, so let's talk about steps you can take to look good to large primes. And there's a whole bunch of other training I have out there that you can follow. But the first thing I just wanted to say is one of the things you can do to look good to a large prime is to seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits from his book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. But this idea of seeking first to understand, remember what I said is find out what they need, bring what they need. Well, the way you do that is seek to understand them. Don't just walk in and try to take, right? Or to even tell them, hey, here's us, here's us, here's us, here's us. It's like blah, 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 blah. Instead, figure out how to understand them. And the first way you understand them is doing research, beginning to do an understanding of a large prime the same way you would an agency. You might read their strategic documents. There's so many pages on a website in a large prime where they talk about their digital transformation direction that they want to support the government. They talk about what they're trying to do with the federal government. Well, if you take the time to understand that, then when you go in and have conversations, you can weave in what we do and who you are with that understanding. The second bullet I had here is give, then ask. And this comes from a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk who says jab, 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 right hook, or left hook or something like that. But jab, 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 hook, right? And the idea is too many of us go in and we just ask for something. Don't ask for something. Look at the relationships with federal agencies, with large primes, with everybody, even the small businesses. Look at them as long-term, not transactional. Transactional means I go in, I want to see if you can give me something I would value. If not, I'm going to move on. No, instead say, I want to build strategic relationships. And the way you build strategic relationships is you give, then you ask. Like I rarely ask for anything in my trainings. And the idea is I just give, and it's because I'm trying to build a community. Well, it's the same thing when you're building a relationship with your community of large prime contractors or agency folks. Some other ways you can look good that are a little bit more tactical are have certifications like CMMI. CMMC is coming up, so being ready for that. You can go check out a company called Steel Toed who's in our community here and a customer of mine, but they talk about CMMC and what you should be thinking about as you move towards 2025. Well, the larges are thinking about this for sure. At some point, that certification is vital in order for you to work with a large. And so having something like that makes you look good. I put here ISO. That's one of the standard ones that are out there. But just thinking about which certifications are important, that could be something you ask even in the first meeting as you're talking with larges. What do you value? I did a whole training that you can go look at where I had large prime contractors come in and talk about basically what do they want to see. This training that I do, by the way, is not me guessing what large primes want. It's what I hear over and over and over again from large primes. And I'm like, okay, let me just go teach you. And the last one is have contract vehicles they don't have access to. Remember, I used this story throughout today's training about my customer who won that 100 plus million. Well, it was actually an IDIQ, but it was a single award IDIQ that all of the money is spent. So it's not like it's not going to be spent. And the larges knew it, and they wanted on that vehicle because it locked them out for 5 years. And so they wanted to be part of it. And one of the ways this company and you could look good to a large prime is to have access to contract vehicles the way the government is buying that they don't have access to themselves. It could be Oasis Small Business or Oasis 8A Pool or 8A Stars 3 or any of these contract vehicles that might be in the small business pool. That's attractive to a large because they too want to get access to your, remember there's 3 revenue streams. They want to get access to the small business revenue stream. Okay, so this last slide, I just want to talk about some tips on building a relationship with large prime contractors. First off, remember that I have at least 50 different trainings in my pool that you can find on my newsletter, right? You can find on my LinkedIn profile. And I even just posted it today. Maybe somebody will put the link into the chat. But you can find many, many trainings I've done on how to build relationships. Here's just a different way of looking at it, right? So the first thing I want you to remember is that people buy from those they know, like, and trust, right? People buy from those they know, like, and trust. And so when you're thinking about building a relationship with a large prime, think about how you can begin to get them first off to know you. You might do that with LinkedIn engagement, et cetera, but how you can begin to get them to like and trust you. And I've talked and taught in the past about shifting left in a sales cycle. Well, large primes have that same thing where they want to shift left and get engaged with customers early on. And so if you're able to share some of that information that you learn about and they start seeing it, this is a way for them to begin to like you. Oh, you know, it's awesome. They're sharing that information. Trust begins to be around what your core competency is. So for example, if you do risk management framework, you want to be sharing information out there, whether you're directly with them or in an environment like LinkedIn where they would see it, you begin to be this trusted advisor to them because they look to that data. The second thing, and this goes back to seek first, understand, but the second bullet here is people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so if you're trying to build a relationship, take the time to get to know them, right? And the way you can do that is, and I think I got it right down here, really get to know them. You can get in and read some of their strategic documents that they have. There's annual reports that large primes put out. You can look at those, but there's all sorts of federal government specific information that large primes create. They do events where they're talking about it and you can understand their goals and objectives, what they're trying to do. You can understand some of their own challenges and pain points. Right now, there's a lot of different conversations going on in the federal news environment, talking about some major projects larges are running into, what they're doing. If you do unique service, for example, emerging technologies, these large primes are not the cutting edge. You could be the cutting edge, and so get in there. And then I also just talked about understanding strategic documents from an agency standpoint and really coming back and bringing that in. I like seeing where large primes are winning and then going in and finding those agencies, those program offices, strategic documents to begin to align it back. The next one is always have an objective in the next step. So when you're going in and you're talking with a large prime, and I've got a lot of training specifically on how do you get the meeting, how do you have the meeting, but you want to have an objective. How do you move this meeting forward? And when I work with my customers in the workshop, I'm always working with a call plan. I say, when you have a meeting, that call plan should have an objective on it that moves forward. And it's your objective, and it's one that they would value as well. So an example might be, if I'm trying to build a relationship with a large prime, I might reach out to them just to establish it and tell them, hey, look, I'm talking to this agency all the time because we're in there. What if I go take a look at some of their upcoming opportunities over the next 12 or 24 months? Never look short term. Don't look at opportunities 6 months or earlier, or less time, because largest just don't have the ability to track that. But look farther out and say, what if I bring that back? Would that be something valuable to you? Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be hearing about those opportunities and get insight. I literally share about how billion-dollar firms reach out to me to reach you. They're asking me to share their information with you. Well, if you can bring that kind of information back to them, that would be valuable to them. It's like, okay, why don't we schedule a meeting for 2 weeks out? I'll go do some things, and then we'll reconnect in 2 weeks. That's the objective. That's the next step. And the way you build a relationship is always make sure that that relationship is building on purpose, not reactionary or accidentally, but you're strategically moving it forward. You're thinking about them and you're thinking about yourself. And that's why I put this last one. Always make sure you have that next meeting lined up. So here's what I want you to remember for today. A lot of training. First off, biggest thing to remember is go into my training repository here on LinkedIn, and you will find a lot about building relationships, about getting into larges beyond even just today. But what I would like you to do today, if you got time, or tomorrow, is pick one large prime contractor that you want to get into that aligns to the agency that you're in or that you want to get into. So one large prime contractor. Then build a target list. And I talked about it on Monday, how you can do that. So you can watch that replay, but build a target list of 100 people minimum at that large prime that you can go into. I talked on Monday on how BAE, which is a huge billion-dollar firm, they got like 2,000 business developers on LinkedIn. It's not hard for you to find 100 that you can reach out to. And then the last thing is, going with that, is just start with a basic LinkedIn engagement. Begin to give thumbs up to some of the stuff they do. You can decide when it's the right time to reach out. And there's whole training you can watch on that. But this idea of building that relationship and getting it started just requires some activity that you move forward doing. So I'm watching my time. I'm seeing I'm out of time. If you're interested in working with us, just check out our website, govconchamber.com. Make sure you leave a thank you in the chat, or a Graham rocks if you appreciate our sponsor of the day. And as you move forward into the rest of your week, just remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.